I am Marwan Cameron, and this is the Conduit. All right, y'all, it's Monday. It's 2:57 p.m. in Kitsap County, 68 degrees. It's a beautiful day outside. So glad that you can join us. September 20. We got a good show for you today. As you know, Mondays are our housing day, where we have Bremerton Housing Authority Executive Director Jill Stanton coming on, and KCR, Kitsap Community Resources, Matt Garrett, Housing Manager, to give us updates and talk about all things housing. So we're excited for that. Look forward to seeing what's new, getting the latest and greatest information. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. As you know, there is the Global Day of Climate Action, September 25th at 11 a.m. in Bremerton. The meeting will be at the Manette Bridge, and they will be marching to Evergreen Park. There will be speakers, music, booths, and more. So come out and join. Definitely learn, which is a big deal, right? Our series this month is centered around preparedness, right? Emergency preparedness. And so we're going to be coming to you with that theme. To that end, there is a Resilient Community Workshop series that will be taking place on Thursdays at 6:30 p.m., September 23rd to December 16th at Black Ring Spirits. And that's out at 1700 Mile High Drive, Suite 116 in Port Orchard. And so they're asking, one, space is limited, of course, because of COVID. But they're also asking, if you do decide to join them, that you commit to being able to attend every workshop. So this is a powerful workshop on resiliency. I really hope to have one of our folks from G2 attend this event because it is that critical. So as you hear me and my team of Okoye Vargas, Tamachi Vargas, Martitha, Deborah, Christina, we have come together to start bringing you different shows and different information, right? First, it was centered around housing, and the first one that we had, the very large one we had, was, centered around, the landlords' experience during this time of COVID, right? And rental assistance and their impact. And so we're going to continue on with bringing you more and more information, right? There's a lot going on in our community, and we need a central location to be able to have folks come in and access that information. So that's it. Tomorrow we will be launching Deborah's Corner on Tuesdays. So Tuesday evenings at 6 p.m. you can come in and join us for Deborah's Corner, where we will have the topic of the day. She will have guest speakers come in, and you'll learn more about Deborah and her work in the community over the last, 20, 30 years or so. So Deborah's Corners will be on Tuesdays. This Wednesday, we have Carl Jacobson from the NAACP. On Thursday, we're looking to confirm with Tracy Flood. And I think we're going to have a double show on Thursday where we have Dr. Gib Morrow from Kitsap Public Health coming back on to talk about COVID. So Matt is backstage. Let me go ahead and bring him on. How you doing today, Matt?
What's going on, Marwan?
Oh man, I'm living the dream. I'm blessed and highly favored. I'm glad to be here. I still got this cough and some other symptoms, but I'm trying to get through.
How you feeling?
Man, from a Blade movie, I feel like Hammered S. I feel a lot better than I did before. The last previous 2 weeks. Wow. I mean, I was starting to, thinking about settling my affairs that first week. It was pretty bad.
Wow.
But it's a good thing I was vaccinated, and like I said, I've got this lung disease, and it definitely impacts you. So when I get sick, I get really sick. I just don't get sick that often. So actually, like I said, Dr. Morrow's going to come on. I believe Thursday we're going to confirm that. I don't know if you would be available for that because you've also had a breakthrough case, and I think that'd be a powerful conversation to talk about, because I think a lot of people don't have, there's so much information out there in the mainstream media, and breakthrough cases, I believe the ratio is 1 out of 5,000 folks can get a breakthrough case. And it's not saying that you're not going to get COVID, but you're less likely to be hospitalized, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't hospitalized, thank goodness. And I'm here, and I feel great. Compared to how I felt, I'm 100%. Honestly, I'm probably like 78 or so, but blessed and highly favored, and glad to be here for sure.
Yeah, I hear you. It was no, I mean it. I think the worst of it for me was like that for kind of 5 days, that week mark, but it still lingered on a good kind of 2 weeks of just being really tired and pretty knackered, and having kind of breathing, like I could feel it in my lungs, and so it sounds like you might still be there a little bit. You still got a little cough. You still got a little going on.
I was sweating earlier before the show started. I'm definitely super winded and fatigued. And I went to urgent care, and they gave me the sheet that said, hey, and I also can't smell. So they said, hey, these things can last up to 3 months. So it's like, are you serious? But again, compared to being sick and just dealing with, like regular kind of cold symptoms, I'll take it, twice on Sunday for sure.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and let Jill in. How you doing today, Jill?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. So glad that you're able to join us today. As I was telling the audience, we had kind of have a standing plan to kind of come together once a week or so we can, talk to the community and kind of share out what's new, what's going on, kind of tips and things like that, so that they can access resources. And COVID definitely took me out of the picture for a minute. And so, we also had the 9/11 commemoration event that last Saturday. And so there were numerous podcasts that were going on. So it was all that I could do to get through that. But we're through it. We're on the other side. And so, I want to make sure that folks have access and get the latest and greatest information. As we know, the moratorium bridge is going to expire here in about 10 days, right? And I know that there's a lot of uncertainty in the community as to what is that going to mean for folks? What is that going to mean for their relationship with their landlords? What's going to happen as we go into the fall? Are we going to see mass evictions? Like what could we possibly see, and how can people kind of hedge, and prepare so they don't find themselves in this type of situation? So I think this is a critical conversation right now to have. So I'll just jump right. Let's first talk about updates, and then we'll kind of get into that kind of heavy piece of it. So Matt, if you would, any updates or changes to the programs for KCR and the housing on either side, either through rental assistance or the housing programs?
Yeah, our not too many drastic changes, but the big one that we trained our outreach partners, that I think I mentioned a little bit last time, is that when the landlords agree to the program, there's extra tenant protections. So that's what we're trying to get the word out right now, especially to the landlords, so that they know it's not the same form, it's a little different. And it adds more protections for the tenant. The idea is so that if landlords are taking money from the program, that they're going to give them a little, even after this bridge moratorium ends, that they're going to give them a little bit of runway before they do a few things. So the protections kind of boil down to 6 months after you accept assistance. So typically we pay the back rent and then we pay 2 months forward as long as it's under 12 months. So that's typically, it can vary a little bit depending on how much back rent they owe. But so right now, if we paid you in September, right, we paid you 3 months of back rent, we paid 2 months forward, October, November, but the landlord would then agree to these extra protections for 6 additional months. So that would be October, November, December, January, February, and then until March, that they would be able to kind of proceed as usual. And those protections are a few things. So it's one is you can't raise rent. So there's no, and rent being raised is a huge issue, and it's something that's affecting a lot of people, and I think it's going to affect more folks, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but we know it's happening. So the idea is you can't, if you're going to take money to get your tenant whole, you can't raise rent for 6 months. You can't add additional fees. That was kind of there before, but you can't add any additional fees or late charges, and like later to try to recoup additional funds. So there's no extra fees that you can add. But then the biggest one is you can't, similar to some of the moratorium protections, is that you can't refuse to renew the lease for those 6 months unless the tenant doesn't pay rent, violates the lease, there's health safety issue, or the landlord gives 90-day notice that they're going to occupy or sell the premises. So essentially, if the landlord is done with the tenant, or if they have a month-to-month, or the year is up and they don't want to renew, they can't refuse to renew the lease, or they have to allow the month-to-month to continue for 6 months as long as the tenant is now, caught back up and following the lease. There's no violations of the lease. So that's the big one, kind of right there, is that if the landlord is ready to be done, they got to continue for at least 6 months until they can, if they want to go their separate ways. The tenant can opt out of that sooner, but it's just the landlord can't initiate that. And then if that doesn't happen, then they're going to refund. They're agreeing that if they break that, then they're going to refund the money back to KCR.
Okay, so let me just kind of recap that. So what you're saying is, if a tenant goes to the landlord and comes through the eviction assistance program, then part of that protection says, hey, for the next 6 months, from the time that they got their 2 months ahead, right? So whatever that, let's say they paid last month's rent, and then they get October, November. So from December 1 and 6 months forward, they would have 6 months of the landlord not being able to raise rent, not being able to add additional fees, and they would not be able to not renew their lease. So if their lease comes up for renewal within that 6 months, as long as that tenant is paid up, they must renew the lease. That's true?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm going to type that in the chat. That's a big deal.
It is.
That's huge.
It is.
One thing I might note too then is, and I'll make a statement and just let me know if this is accurate. So let's say I did rental assistance back in July. So, and you paid 2 months ahead, which would be July, August, September. So then I would basically have October, November, December, January, February, March of protection before these things kind of expired, and the landlord could evict me if I wasn't paying or whatever the case may be. Is that true?
It doesn't work. That would be true if that program was in place then, but this just started September. So this is folks.
Oh.
So this doesn't affect landlords that have agreements with us prior. This is only folks going forward September on. And there's a few cases if an eviction's inevitable. There's and you're working with legal. There's a few cases where this wouldn't quite work out, but generally this is the program going forward for most folks. So as usual, there's always exceptions, but yeah, so it's only going forward. And I did want to clarify that the 6 months starts from when we actually process the application, not from when our assistance ends. So if we process them in September, September's the first month. Then you have October, November, December, January, February. So March is when that goes up.
So it starts when you process the application. So as soon as that first month, if it's back rent, then that's when that 6 months that clock starts. So we're in September now. So if we paid August or you paid August, then that's when it would start, right? It would be August, September, October, November, December, January would be the 6 months.
No, it would start it wouldn't start when the back rent started. It would start when we actually process, like in real time, when the landlord agrees to it. So when we
got you.
Yeah, so we'll pay the back rent, and then like if the landlord didn't sign the paperwork till October, that would then and if that's the current month, and it just took that long, then October would be when that 6 month clock started. So then it was like October, November, December, January, February, March, and then April would be when those 6 months are up.
Got you. Okay, so when the landlord signs the form there.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just typing that into the chat because I want to make sure that we're accurate there. Signs the paperwork. All right, so that is really important. 6 months of protection. Can't raise rent for 6 months. Can't add additional fees or late charges, and cannot refuse or renew the lease, which is awesome. The program just started in September of this year, so anything previous to that is not under that. And then lastly, the 6 month clock starts when you process the application. So when the landlord signs the paperwork, that's when it starts. So all that is there in the chat for you to share out with folks, because it's important for us to be accurate and understand how these programs work. And I missed the training, so Fridays can be kind of bad for me. So it's good for me to kind of hear it also. Is there some other things that you wanted to add in there that you think is applicable there based on that upcoming training or that training that just passed?
Yeah, just a few more things on that point is the landlord. If you're on a year lease and it's up, the landlord doesn't have to offer you a new year lease. They could just offer you a 6 month or a 4 month just to get you through the 6 months. So just want to be aware that they don't have to offer you a new, they just have to fulfill the obligation. So it's not a guarantee of a complete year lease. So I just want to make that clear. So and the tenant still has to follow there. If they don't, if the tenant falls behind on rent again, then they don't have those protections. It's just trying to give tenants that are got caught back up and are now paying, that they have at least 6 more months to kind of figure it out, right? Either move to a new place, talk with their landlord, because we definitely encourage dialogue with the landlord. Are you planning on raising rent at the end of this, right? Are you going to renew the lease? Are you going to sell? Like what's their plans? And then hopefully that can give them some planning time. That's really the idea. And the reason of this, Commerce kind of instituted this, is because they were seeing a lot of times we would pay and get people caught back up, but then they would still end up without a home because the landlord would just not renew the lease after the assistance was up. So that's why it was in place. Now, that's kind of the tenant side, but I do, if you're a landlord and you can always contact myself, or the Keep It outreach partners if you're working with them. But I know landlords have some concerns about this. It's putting more pressure. We understand that, but again, I think our priority is trying to keep people housed through this crisis. As you say, Marl, winter's coming, right? It's trying to get people through winter, right? And then into the spring, which is a little better time, right? To be moving around and whatnot. So that's kind of where we're at there.
And that's important to mention, that you're not just an advocate or helping out clients, that you are also trying to help out landlords. So I think sometimes, when folks kind of hear what resources are out there, they can take it as, well, this is just for the clients. This isn't for me, right? This is just to help them. But no, the purpose is to try to keep the relationship as good as possible and keep folks housed, right? And so, it is for both sides. So again, landlords, property managers, please reach out to Matt if you have questions, right? That's a big deal. Go ahead and continue, Matt. Sorry.
No, that's great, Marwan. And you're right. And I know a lot of landlords don't feel that way. I know they feel, that they've been put through a lot and kind of under attack. And that's why it's a tough issue. But yeah, Marwan, you said it perfectly. That's the ultimate goal, kind of the deeper mission behind this is to restore the relationship between the tenant and the landlord so they can function as normal, right? So that they can kind of be restored. And and not just so that they can recoup money and then, all right, you're out, right? The goal of this is for restoration, and then the tenant and then the landlord can both, be back in good standing and move forward, because that's ultimately what's going to keep people housed and not stress the homeless system, right? Our market is incredibly tight already. Looking for housing is incredibly challenging, and if you add a bunch of people into that, it's not going to be a great situation. So you're absolutely right. It is for both. Yes, it is. We're more on the traditionally we're more on the tenant advocacy side, but you're absolutely right. It definitely is for the landlords as well. Absolutely. Thanks, Marwan.
Yeah, absolutely. Jill, do you want to add anything in there that I know sometimes when conversations are happening, things kind of pop in. It's like, ooh.
Well, so although we do similar things, we also are doing very different things. So with the Section 8 and public housing residents and clients, there's other things available to them. So if we had a public housing resident who lost a job, if they report that to us, then their rent will automatically go down and their subsidy will automatically go up. So they shouldn't need the rental assistance. Now, that would be for loss of income. If they had expenses grew as a result of COVID or something, then it could be a little different, and then rental assistance could be necessary. But a public housing resident does not need to be worried about the eviction moratorium going away, because we would not evict someone for non-payment. We would be working with them to enter into a repayment agreement or something like that before we would ever go down that road. It's a little different with the Section 8 because they could have a landlord that is not the housing authority, but it would be the same in that if they lost income, they could report that to the housing authority, and their portion of that rent would go down, and the landlords would have continued to be paid during this pandemic, the housing authority's portion. I'll just add this and then I'll stop. But if there's a landlord out there who is not getting paid from the tenant's portion, but they are getting the housing authority's portion, we would like to hear about that so that we can help work through that with them. And I don't know why my camera's not working, Marwan. I've tried to get it on, it just will not.
Oh, no worries. It's Monday, right?
I guess so.
That's how it goes. So basically, kind of to recap there, because there was someone that had that question, and that's why I asked you that, is what is the cause and effect of clients once the moratorium ends for Section 8 and public housing clients? And basically, there really is no effect. It's going to be business as usual. If they have a change in circumstance based on their income, just reach out as soon as possible, and Bremerton Housing Authority will go ahead and take care of it.
Yeah, that's right. What I do worry a little bit about with our Section 8 tenants is that there could be a reason other than non-payment of rent that eviction could happen. And so in those cases, there is some legal protections. I'm not overly familiar with all of them, but I think that might be an interesting podcast to do, because I know that there's some legislation that's been passed to assist with the eviction process. So it's not just as, they would have some legal what's the word I'm looking for? They would have representation through the eviction process, but that may not, ultimately stop the eviction. So I just think we got to be really, that we really need to be aware of what's going on as far as what landlords are going to be doing once the eviction moratorium is lifted. That being said, they will not lose their voucher because of being evicted from their home if it was, for something that was landlord related and not them. So, and even if it was like non-payment of their portion or something, that would still not be enough for them to lose their voucher. So if there's any issues like that, they should reach out to us. And if they do lose their units for any reason and still have a voucher, we will offer assistance with helping them to the best that we can find another unit.
Absolutely. All right. Are there any other updates from Bremerton Housing Authority that would be helpful for folks to know?
I just have a couple. Matt and some of the Bremerton Housing Authority staff did a great job of presenting a training to our partnering agencies on the emergency housing vouchers. So if anybody needs more information about that, they can get a hold of Matt or they can contact me or anybody from the Housing Authority. But that is ongoing. As you know, we have 38 vouchers, and I think we've had over 20 referrals so far. No one is housed yet, so that's the exciting moment that we're waiting for. And then the only other thing that's kind of new to us is that we are going to be getting vouchers to serve young adults aging out of foster care.
Oh,
So that's a really cool program that we've been working on for a while, and I think that it's going to we're partnering with the county and also with an organization called Olive Crest, who's going to be doing the case management. So we're really excited to get that up and going, and think that we could have up to 30 young adults in this situation that could utilize that voucher over the next year. So we're doing that.
oh, that's awesome. I love to hear that. I actually was someone in foster care who aged out. So I didn't know of any of those resources when I was 17. And actually, I just kind of emancipated myself. I was living at the YMCA on 4th Avenue, downtown Seattle. And, it's like, I'm 17. What am I doing here? I'll just live on my own. So I didn't know of any of these programs, and I don't even know what existed back then. But, you're 17, and sometimes you think you know it all, and even if you don't know it all, or it's hard for you to ask for help, and you don't trust people, and so that's really good to know that these resources are coming available, and folks are being thoughtful in that way. I think that's really powerful. Matt, based on what Jill was saying with the training, is there anything you want to follow up there with some information updates?
Not on that. Jill did a great job, and we really are looking forward to partnering with Bremerton Housing Authority and the Emergency Housing Voucher Program, and in 38, and those will get filled up really, really quick. I know, that we hope we get more from that, but that's my only thoughts there. But that's been a really cool program, and we hope that can be a template moving forward for how to get more people experiencing homelessness, especially chronic homelessness, into housing with Section 8 and with these kind of group of agencies. Is this the moment? I know you had a question too. You wanted to talk about the second round. Are you saving that for later, or should we jump into that now?
Yeah, we can jump into that. Christina in the chat is saying Bremerton Housing Authority is working with the county for housing resources to youth that are aging out of the foster care system. Let's go ahead and transition into that. So, are people that have received help previously able to come back and get more help if they need it?
Yeah, the short answer is no, and the reason for that is we have, our wait list is back up around the mid 300s right now, and getting closer to 400, and those are all people that have not gotten help once. So we know we've heard from folks, and it breaks our heart. We're hopefully in the next few weeks, jobs should be posted. If you are interested, jobs should be posted today. But we're trying to double the size of the team to try to meet this demand. And so we're looking for 4 to 5 people to join us. So if you're interested, that's how we're long-term going to solve this problem. But the short term is no, we want to get through the people that haven't gotten any assistance at all in 2021 before we open back up to second round or people that need assistance. And we know they're there. We know some people, especially early on, we got people who, we helped them back in March or April, May, and June, and their assistance now is like just up, right? That 2 months doesn't last long, and they're up, right, and they're still not recovered. They still can't find a job, or they still, whatever it is, they've got the issues that they're working through. So we know those folks are there. We know there's people that need more rent assistance, and so that's something that we're very aware of, and we're hoping as these months go by and into 2022, we'll kind of have a solution for that segment. But the short term is no, we got to focus on the people that haven't gotten any help yet, so that we can give them a shot. Now, we were talking. Jill was mentioning the legal folks, and that's a good segue. The one caveat to that is that if you are actually in the eviction process, like you're in the act of getting evicted, our legal partners. So we now, as part of our Keep It outreach partners, we now have Dispute Resolution Center, we have Kitsap Legal Service, and Northwest Justice Project. All of them, as part of working with the landlord, right, as part of mediation, if they need rent assistance, that's the one exception, is that they can make referrals. But you need to be in the eviction process, and we don't want people going through the eviction process to get rental assistance. That's not the idea, right? It's really kind of a last ditch effort to keep people housed that if they already got help once and they're in the eviction process. So yeah, if you are in this position where you do need help, we definitely understand. If you can try to work with your landlord, payment plan, whatever it may be, right, to kind of hold on, hopefully until next year. But if you do end up in the eviction process, there could be a lifeline depending on the attorneys and the mediators at dispute resolution, depending on the plan. So that is kind of the last line of defense that we have available. But we're definitely not encouraging people to go down that route. Eviction is not fun, right? That's not, and usually it's initiated by the landlord, right? So there's that's kind of typically how the process goes. But just like Jill said, there's a lot of new protections. There's the just cause eviction, there's right to counsel, and then there's this mediation program through the dispute resolution centers that have changed the eviction process permanently, and it's very, very different. I hope, and that might, like Jill said, Marwan, might be a good idea to get our legal partners on here, for another podcast to really dive in detail. But the nuts and bolts of it is, for non-payment of rent, landlords and tenants have to go to dispute resolution center first to try to resolve it. And that's, again, a process where they can refer for rent assistance at that point, if that's appropriate. And then if it solves it, that solves it, and then they're done. If it doesn't solve it, then the landlord can then go to court to actually go before a judge. But the judge can kick it back. It's all kind of, it's not a linear process anymore. There's multiple kind of pathways. And then the RTC, that's the right to counsel, that can kick in through Kitsap Legal Services. And so if they qualify, there is an income limit, which I don't know off the top of my head, but if you qualify, you automatically actually have an attorney that can help walk you through the mediation process, then advocate in court, and especially help you work through the just cause. The just cause law, I'm not even going to attempt to summarize. There's a lot of, it's really complicated. There's basically all these rules now that landlords can only refuse to renew a lease because of this, and this reason. But then there's all types of exceptions. So ultimately, getting a lawyer, if you qualify, is going to be hugely beneficial to walk you through this process, and to help. And what a lot of times the lawyers are going to do is, even if they can't avoid eviction, they hopefully will avoid you having an eviction on your record, right? Because that's what a lot of people, when they just leave, when they just don't go through this process, the landlord just wins automatically and then tends to have an eviction on their record, which is incredibly hurtful going forward. So going through this process, communicating with your landlord, getting the resources, getting an attorney if you qualify, going to the dispute resolution center is only going to benefit you, even if they can't, keep you in your place. There's all types of settlements that a lawyer can achieve that is much more beneficial than to you just leaving, right, without getting that assistance. So those are all partners. So that is kind of the only kind of lifeline for additional rent assistance right now. Again, as soon as we figure out and get more folks in here, hopefully in the coming months, we can announce, getting more folks, but we really have to get through our first round. So
let me ask a question to see if I understand it correctly. And as far as your legal team coming on, I don't know if next Monday is fast enough for you to rally them, but I think that would be really powerful to have on. So if there's a way we can do that, and then if it can't be on a Monday, we can definitely schedule another time to have them come on, because it's that critical for sure. But I don't understand this part of it, and so in my interpretation, before you're kind of explaining it, I'm thinking, hey, the bridge program is going to expire, and if I've been behind on my rent and the landlord wants me out, they're going to immediately execute the eviction process, right? And so at that point in time, what you're saying is I'm going to have to go and get some legal representation through dispute resolution or Kitsap Legal Services. But by the time I'm able to do that, because when the situation was going on with the Midway, they were telling some of their folks it was like a 2-month, backup to get help from them. Would I already be put out, and then I'm already stuck? Am I off on that? Because I'm just trying to process like the time frame on it. Like, how does it work?
Yeah, so and that's what's complicated. And the hotels are a whole other branch that I think some of the lawyers are still arguing about. And please don't hear me wrong, as I'm not an attorney, right? I'm trying to understand the process just as much as everyone else. And this is a summary of the summary. So yeah, as soon as I think why I talking with Kitsap Legal and Northwest Justice is they're hesitant to do some of the kind of stuff like this and outreach because the process is still being built. So Dispute Resolution Center and the Kitsap Legal Services these are very new programs for the resolution kind of project that's starting, and then the right to counsel. So they're still building it. So I think they want a little more time in order before they might want to do an event like this. Because Marvel, I want them to come train my team. So and they're like, whoa, let's figure it out first. So I'm like, okay, but yeah, as soon as they're at that point, Marwan, I will definitely ask, and we can see if we can get them on here. And they're also part of the Keep It outreach. So at our next training, or you can always network with them directly. Joanne is awesome from Kitsap Legal, and same with Mary from Dispute Resolution Center. And so they're really awesome, passionate people, and Sam from Northwest Justice Project as well. But so okay, let me back up a second. To your question, can they get backed up? Yes, they can. Right? They're a small organization that, like us, that is trying to scale up rapidly. I love last time when we did the scale, right? So that folks can see just how difficult it is. They're in the same boat, right? They went. I think Kitsap Legal went from an agency of 2, and now they're 10-ish. So I mean, they really rapidly scaled up, and now they actually have attorneys on staff, whereas before they were always working with attorneys in the community. So it's been a big for them. Dispute Resolution Center, this is all new for them, right? Working in this eviction space, and they're really good at mediation. And so sometimes there might be a wait. That's why the eviction defense hotline is probably, instead of sometimes going directly to Kitsap Legal, the eviction defense hotline is kind of the way to go, as far as, because if Kitsap Legal can't take it, then the eviction defense hotline will get them to Northwest Justice Project. So I think the best way to go is the Washington State eviction defense hotline. Do you have that, Marwan, or do you?
I don't. Yeah,
okay.
If you can type it in the chat if you've got it, or just send it when you get a chance, I'll put it up there. Washington State eviction defense
hotline. Yeah.
Hotline.
Yeah. So it's 1-855.
1-855.
657 8387, and this will ensure that if they qualify, that they can either go to Northwest Justice Project or Kitsap Legal Services. So I think Kitsap Legal Services, they will be doing the majority in Kitsap, but I think there's potentially some cases in overflow that Northwest Justice. That's my understanding now. Again, this is all somewhat tentative, so, and I'll let them speak for themselves when we get them on here. But so that's one reason for a delay. The other reason is hotels and other spaces that are, I think there's definitely some open legal questions about how landlord-tenant law applies in those cases, and that's beyond, that's definitely lawyer territory for there. I think other reasons for delays is also if the tenant is potentially over income, right? If they don't qualify for assistance, although most people do, but there is income limits for these programs. But I definitely, it's call that number. I think that's right now what I'm hearing from them is kind of the best way to access services, and you can get routed to either one of them. Now, the other is, there's so many different types of kind of housing and where you're at. And so that's why I think talking to a lawyer, especially if you're in getting through the eviction process. Like you mentioned the hotels, that's going to be a different kind of process potentially than kind of your standard apartment, depending on kind of what agreements you have. So that's why getting an attorney is going to be immensely helpful. But yeah, if there is a delay, I know it's tough. But the eviction defense hotline, I know if folks are experienced, the clear hotline, which is the other one, is really tough to get through to. But this one, Northwest Justice Project runs this, and they have more staff, more hours throughout the day. I think it's regular business hours. So, and I think they're getting through much more people than the clear hotline. So that's the way to go.
All right. So maybe a little harder to get through on the clear. Two resources that are powerful to take advantage of. And again, you may not need this information now, but write it down, because when you need it or someone else needs it, you'll be scrambling to try to figure it out, right? So this is the time where you collect your resources and you have them in your back pocket for that just in case, right? That's why information is so very powerful. So please, gather that information. Do you want to add anything to that, Jill?
Well, as Matt was talking, I was just thinking from a couple of perspectives on this. There's, there's the tenant's perspective, right, who need to get some training and understand their legal rights. But then there's also the landlord side of this. And I think it may be interesting. I mean, the ultimate goal is for us to support both. And I think, as Matt said earlier, landlords really feel like they have struggled through this. But if there's a way for them to understand how the law has changed, even us, the housing authority as a landlord, well, we need to understand how the laws have changed to make sure that when we're in these situations that we know what has changed, what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do, and what are the resources available to ultimately help us keep people housed and working together. I love the Dispute Resolution Center. I think that's going to be a powerful resource, but it might be interesting, I guess, from both perspectives to do a training on both sides of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that would definitely be really important to do.
Yeah.
Let me ask, let me kind of give you a scenario of what I think some folks will be facing and see what kind of advice that you would give to folks. We know that, winter is not only coming, but it's here. Game of Thrones, by the way, is going to have a new show coming soon, so that's exciting. But, in order to get into a space, there's a lot of different factors, right? Whether or not you have that eviction that's on your record, true story, what your rental history is, if you have a job, how long have you been on that job? Obviously, are you making 3 times the rent? People find that to be important. Your credit. So all of these factors come into play. And what I've noticed on Facebook lately is a lot of folks have been saying, hey, my landlord is selling their place and I've got to move. And this isn't folks that are on any kind of assistance, right? These are just folks that are in the community. And it's like, I'm looking for a 2-bedroom and 2-bath, and this is what I pay here. Please be out on the lookout and let me know if there's anything here. So I'm starting to see an increase of folks that are like, man, I've got to move and I can't find anything. So has that been your experience? Is that what you're kind of hearing, that there isn't a lot of availability as far as affordable housing? And to that end, you have folks that need some help, some assistance, but then you have regular folks that are able to pay, but also can't find it. And so based on that, what kind of advice would you give to folks as far as, trying to be prepared if they find themselves in the situation, regardless of whether they need assistance or not?
Yeah, well, I'll just answer short here. That is a problem. It is a huge problem for this county, the lack of affordable housing, and it's true whether you have assistance or you don't. That if you need affordable housing, it's going to be hard to find, especially in the 1 and 2 bedroom areas. So I guess, looking early, if you think you could be in that position, if you fear that your landlord may be wanting to sell, starting the process of looking right away. And I think KCR may have some resources. The housing authority's resources are primarily limited to our residents and our Section 8 voucher holders, but there may be some other resources that Matt can talk about. The other thing that the housing authority is, really working on is increasing the affordable housing in our community in any way that we can, whether it's, buying a hotel or buying any kind of a complex that comes up for sale that we can afford, looking for grants and other opportunities for funding to increase and preserve affordable housing, because the problem is it's concerning. It's alarming to me.
And it's not just here, right? I mean, this is how it is all over.
It's true that it's not just here, but Kitsap County has some unique things that I think make it even tougher here. And that's one, we're competing with the Navy when those ships come in. And so that doesn't happen in other communities. So there's just these, a couple of things that make it a really, really challenging here.
Absolutely. Matt?
Yeah, I mean, oh gosh, yeah, we could do a whole podcast just on this issue, and I don't know, maybe we should, but yeah, first I'll just say, I mean, this is an area of, if you ever wonder why housing authorities exist, this is why, right? The affordable housing supply is all we need more of it. And having a landlord, and give a lot of credit to Jill and Bremerton Housing Authority right now, that has a mission of housing people, right? Bremerton Housing Authority is not going to just say, all right, we're going to sell your unit and you have to go, right? And this is the benefit of what these agencies do in the county, because their mission is housing folks, right? And their mission aligns with a lot of community goals, whereas private landlords, right, have all types of various goals, and not that they're not a part of the housing supply, but this is why we do need housing authorities, right, and nonprofits to really have affordable housing, and we just don't have enough of it, and it is a huge problem. And Bremerton Housing Authority, KCR, we have a small piece of this of working to add some units. Bremerton Housing Authority much more at scale, and that's the kind of the long term. But that none of that is going to solve the issue in the next few months, right? When this is really coming, and so this is the short term solutions are not good. But I can give you what I have. If you're part of the KEPA program, right, and if your landlord is selling, that if the landlord is selling because of COVID, or if we can somehow link you being displaced to COVID, you qualify for KEPA. You are eligible for move-in costs to a new place. So that move-in costs are a big barrier. And so, but you got to work with your navigator, because not everyone will qualify for this, because we have to link it to COVID somehow, and we need documentation. And so that is one piece that we can help people that are in the situation, especially the selling. I really do feel for the folks that the landlord is selling the property, because there's no way out of that, right? There's not a lawyer or anyone that can stop that process. That is just, a landlord can decide that, and you have to be out. And so as soon, like Jill said, as soon as that's happening, if you're in that boat, make sure you're on the wait list for rent assistance, right? So that, and then, or if not, you're working with all those legal resources I just mentioned, because they can also refer in, and we can prioritize that application, especially if you're being evicted very soon. But again, the issue is finding a new place, and so that is going to be really challenging. And so looking soon, talking with landlords, right? Marwan, you and I did a podcast last time. What can we do is treat it like a job, right? Like get your resume, make yourself as attractive as possible in this market, because you are competing against a lot of people. You're competing against, tech professionals. You're competing against military folks. You're competing against a lot of people that are coming into our market right now for a variety of different reasons. And then letting them know, hey, I've got move-in costs, right? And we can pay, if they want an extra deposit, like we can do that. Like we can work for these move-in costs to help get people settled. And even with the landlord, if you're part of the Keep It program and you haven't used up your 12 months, we can not only pay to move you in, we can pay 2 months forward to help get you settled. And that might also be attractive to a landlord to have, as long as it doesn't go over the 12 months. If we already use the 12 months, then you're out of luck. But if you're under your 12 months, then we can apply that at the new place. And so that's one kind of solid way, if you're part of the Keep It program, that we can help you if you're being displaced, if the landlord is selling. So that's probably the biggest financial resource that we have. If you end up homeless, and I mean, that's the goal, that we don't want anyone to end up unhoused. But if you do house it, like we talked about in a few past, Housing Solution Center, we typically have, not always, but we typically have resources at least for move-in. Like I know right now we have our rapid rehousing move-in program, but you have to be, in a shelter, place not meant for human habitation, a car, fleeing domestic violence. So that's, you've actually are out of the eviction process and you actually are unhoused. So that's what those resources are for. And we don't want anyone to go through that. So, but that's just a worst case scenario if you do end up of how to get move-in costs. But I think just as trying to prepare, and also I know people, if you can, I know a lot of families are doubling up, right? And that's something, hopefully, if you communicate with your landlord and explain, I know that's an option for some people. Moving out of state, I hate to recommend these options, but that's what people are thinking about, because our market is just so difficult right now. And I wish I had some better. I don't know, Marwan, what would you recommend?
Well, let me jump in and ask you a question, because I'm writing notes as you're speaking, and so one of the things is, historically, in low-income communities, what we end up doing is, hey, daughter has to move back home, son has to move back home. They have their own family, right? And they're here with you, right? Yeah, and that strain becomes, great, on both sides, as they're trying to hold it up. Are you hearing or are there conversations being had with landlords and saying, hey, we need to see if you can start to rethink how you create these leases and allow these families to come together and maybe not look at it as, hey, it's a 2-bedroom house, but it's a 2-bedroom, 2-family house, in order to ensure that the rent gets paid, but then also people are housed. Are there any conversations that have been happening with property managers or landlords based on that? Have you heard anything? And as Birmingham Housing Authority, as a property manager, are you entertaining anything like that?
Yeah, I will say we are entertaining that. Now we have HUD guidelines that speak to what we can allow and can't allow. But all of that is up for discussion right now at the federal level and in housing provider industry groups. So it is something that we're thinking about. And, I think that right now during COVID, there's been a lot of waivers that we've been able to apply to things like that. And we have not been out doing the normal inspections that we normally do. And so, and also, we're leaning toward, I mean, we have to follow the rules. Like, I don't want to say we're not going to follow the rules, but to the extent that we can get away with the most flexible way of applying those type of rules is what we're committed to doing. As long as we're ensuring that the units are safe and secure, and working on that from a variety of ways as well. So yes, to answer your question, that is something that we are talking about.
That's awesome. Have you heard of any landlords or property managers that are starting to entertain that, or open to having conversations on how they can have successful, tenant and landlord relationships?
I personally have not had any of those conversations with landlords, but I think it's certainly worth pursuing.
And have you heard any of that, Matt?
A little bit. It typically we've seen that in some of the private landlords. The property managers tend to have policies and be pretty strict about that. If you're in that situation, and I know this is heartbreaking for us too, and this is where our Keep It program too is, we want to help. We are actually pretty flexible, right? Like, as long as you're okay with your landlord, for the most part with the Keep It program, we'll pay it, right? As long as you're not breaking any of the rules, then we're okay. We just want to make sure we're we're not paying for folks that are, in an illegal lease situation. But if they've communicated, and that's what I always recommend, is communicating with your landlord to try to talk with them. Is like, hey, because the landlord might be a little more flexible. If, hey, I'm bringing someone in, but they're going to help me pay. Otherwise, we're going to fall behind. And especially if you've been a good tenant, maybe they might be more flexible to letting, and pushing their occupancy limits. But I've seen private landlords be some of the most flexible around this issue. And just because, they're, it's kind of one person or a small group of people making a decision. But we also know, the reality is a lot of people out of necessity do it and the landlords don't know, right? And that's the situation that's really tough for us, because we want to account for those situations, but we're also trying to be respectful to the landlords and not pay for families that are, don't have a lease or in violation of a lease. And that's where this is really tough, right? Of where we want to be flexible and understanding, and also, maintain our relationships with landlords. So there's not easy answers to this for sure, as with a lot of questions. But yeah, I think as far as we're concerned, we're pretty flexible in our units. We don't have nearly as many as Bremerton Housing Authority, 36 right now, but we go up to 2 per bedroom and then 2 in the living room, which I think is pretty so we push it there to let some of the bigger families stay in there. And so that's kind of what in our own units, our policy. But yeah, we're always open. And and maybe it is like Jill said, if we want to get some of the bigger property managers, because I think that's where some of the pushback would be with some of our, corporate owned property managers of how can we work with them, especially when families do need to reunite, and they're doing that so that they don't become homeless, right? And that's a real need, and there's just no other way in our market right now to make it. And so allowing pathways for that, I think is yeah, that needs to be the way forward for at least some cases.
Well, and all kinds of different unique things could possibly happen, right? Through conversation and saying, hey, by allowing this to happen and having this discussion and finding a way to kind of set some rules. One, you're going to keep your occupancy. You're more likely to get your rent every month on time, right? You are going to keep families together. You're not going to have this kind of revolving door of having to evict. And, let's say they, increased, some kind of a fee that's not the, double the rent, but a little bit more to it, because there is going to be an additional cost of having these additional bodies on the property. But they're actually doing a community service, right? So they look like, they are good community stewards. And it is a crisis, right? We can only build so fast. And as we build, it's not necessarily going to be affordable, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about the scenario that, I was just in. So, for many folks, they have jobs, not careers, which means they don't have sick leave. They don't have a bank. Mm-hmm. They don't have paid time off. And you get COVID and now you can't go to work, right? You're home. So you've missed 2 weeks, and I'm getting ready to go on my 4th week, and, I don't feel great. And so what do you do now that you're not at work, but the rent is due, right? 2,000 schools have had some type of a shutdown since school has started nationwide. So what happens if your kid comes home and has COVID and they can't go back to school and there's nowhere for your child to go? So that could be an issue, right? So there's going to be all these factors that are going to cause folks to find themselves in a hard way. But I want to be solution oriented. And to that end, I think there's a lot of things that folks can do. Right now, whatever your relationship is with your landlord, it is incumbent upon you to, grow that relationship, to try to restore that relationship, to build that relationship, get to know who that landlord is, get to know that property manager, right? It's the same thing when you were in school, right? Get to know the teacher, have that conversation, because if you have a situation that comes up and you've been someone who typically turns your homework in on time, when there's mitigating circumstances, they're usually more understandable because they know who you are and they know your situation, right? You're just not a number. You're not just a random tenant number 5, right? Or tenant number 500. Some of these apartment complexes are huge. Yeah. But, if you're thinking about cohabitating with another family or other folks or roommates, You need to set boundaries. You need to work on your communication skills. And these skills are all transferable into all the things that you do in your life, right? Dispute resolution. How are you going to navigate when you don't agree on something, right? And we're in a society right now. We're in cancel culture, or we'll just block you or do whatever. We don't have that luxury anymore. We've got to find a way to work through our conflicts, to work through our disagreements, because we got to stay sheltered, right?
Yeah.
And we've got to do this long term. We don't know how long this pandemic is going to persist. And right now, there's no ending in sight. And this was summer. We're coming into fall and winter, right? We're supposed to be wearing masks outdoors. I saw something on Facebook where a bunch of Seahawk fans weren't wearing their masks. So is that a potential super spreader event? I'm pretty socially isolated, because, I get to work from home. I have that luxury, but I still got COVID and I'm not around a lot of people. And so that could be a serious, situation. So, you got to think about who are you going to have over to the house? When are they going to be able to come over? Are they going to be able to spend the night? What is going to be the distribution on taking care of the house? All of these things you need to start considering. Hopefully you don't need them, but you may need them, and you don't know when you're going to need them. And all of these things are skills that you will be able to use either for housing or for other aspects of your life, as I said before. So, what would you recommend for folks to kind of be solution oriented and forward thinking as far as reaching out to their landlord? How might they do that? Some people are very shy. Maybe you haven't paid your rent in the past, so you're feeling some kind of way, like approaching is like, yeah, I know I owe you money. And, it's kind of hard to kind of approach you and say, hi, I'm Marwan. Just want to get to know you a little bit, so you know a little bit about me. And, what kind of things would you suggest as tips?
You want to start, Jill?
Sure, I'll start. So I think what you said about reaching out to your landlord and establishing that relationship is really important. And I would say if you're in that situation where you owe some money, some back rent or something, I think the landlord knowing that you're going to look for resources through a keeper program or something else to help to get some dollars to pay that back rent would go a long way. And the landlord knowing that you're taking the steps that you need to take to try to make the situation better. And even if you're not behind on your rent, I think if anything that this is teaching us right now is you should have a relationship with your landlord, and you should have a good relationship with your landlord. And if there's things that are you're fighting with your landlord over, whether it's them not fixing something in your house or you not being the tenant that they want you to be, I think that this is a perfect time to reach out to the dispute resolution center and see if you can get some help to work through those differences. And then just lastly, I'll say expressing gratitude and appreciation can go a very long way right now. And I think, as a landlord, as a housing authority, I try to make sure that our residents know that I appreciate them living in our units. But it's also always really positive, and it just makes the whole relationship better when the residents are also expressing the gratitude for having a place to live and wanting to be good residents. So I think the relationship is my number one thing.
Let me jump in there before you do, Matt, because Jill said something that was really powerful. That's the power of having multiple voices at the table. People think and process information in different ways, and we're so much stronger together. But that gratitude piece is so critical, right? We think about our situation. So maybe you've been paying your rent on time this entire time, and all of a sudden you fall on hard times for whatever, right? And now you're behind. Well, keep in mind from the landlord's aspect, right? They may have, several people that are already behind. So when you come and you say, hey, I know I've been paying you this whole time, but now I'm behind, and they're frustrated, right? You don't know what their situation is. You're kind of just looking at it from your situation. And if your relationship isn't great with the landlord, all landlords aren't, awesome. I mean, it's a true story. The bottom line is you're the person that needs a place to live. And so some of that is playing the game or swallowing your pride, right? And ensuring that you have a space for you and your family. And I'm not advocating and saying that you have to deal with the slumlord or, they never fix anything and they treat you like dirt or whatever, but it still is incumbent upon you to do the thing. So there's an emotional intelligence aspect to this where you've got to keep your emotions in check, and you need to understand that you're being strategic in what it is that you do so that you can stay housed in the long term, right? If you know what's going on nationwide and there's a shortage of houses, and as Jill was saying, right, we're in this unique position where Seattle's 30 minutes away. So folks that can afford to pay, they're used to paying double what they pay in Seattle, they can come right over here and it's like, oh, this is a deal, right? You've got the shipyard, you've got the carriers coming in and the subs, so we've got the military community. And so now housing is even more squished. Your advantage is you already have a relationship with that landlord. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, you can improve upon that. You take advantage. They still don't know those people yet, and you're already there. So they don't typically like turning over, right? Having to replace the carpet and do all these different things. If they can keep their person in and they can be good stewards of their property and they can get their money, they'd rather be that way. So take advantage of what it is that you have. Go ahead, Matt. Jill said that and it was so powerful. I just had to jump in there.
No, I couldn't agree with both of you more, Marwan. I think you're exactly right. I think Jill hit that. Yeah, I don't want to. I think you two said it perfectly. I mean, one of my ethos is kill them with kindness, right? And I think in our market, right, wrong, or indifferent, the landlords hold majority of the power, right? Because it's supply and demand. There's not enough supply of housing, and so they will have multiple folks applying for units anytime there's an opening, right? Sometimes more than 50. They will just have an exorbitant amount. So the more you can be proactive, like Jill said, even if you're not behind on rent, just go by, shake, not shake hands and co-it, but say hello, we have seen even some of the leasing agents, right? Even folks that you might not the actual property manager, we've seen them do amazing flexible things for our tenants because we have a relationship with them or the tenants have a relationship with them. And so there's a lot of flexibility. Even private landlords. I've seen some private landlords, that have really gone above and beyond for their tenants because of that relationship. Like we have some landlords are coming down here and they're like, hey, I'm just trying to help my tenant. And that's because they have a relationship, because then they're, like you said, stronger together. And I think, the clients have, in some cases, have led with vulnerability, shared some of their story. Not that that's, a winner for everybody, comfortable, but establish that positive relationship, following the rules. I cannot tell you something more that angers a landlord more than when they have to do lease violations, right? And they have to go through that process over and over again. You will make yourself, a prime, target for eviction if you're behind on rent and you have multiple lease violations in your file, right? That is going to kind of be the double whammy of prioritization. If you do so, dispute resolution center. Even if you have a bad relationship, there's ways to turn it around and say, hey, I want to get back on track. So being the best tenant that you can be, or going through mediation to try to solve that, I think is going to be tremendously helpful. That is definitely the best thing you can do. Coming to KCR, if you're behind it, to try to get the rent piece back on up. But I could not agree. Yeah, I won't say any more. I think you two just hit the nail on the head.
And if you're wondering where to get resources, again, Google, YouTube really is your friend. We're in an era right now where we have access to so many different resources, right? How to, start a conversation, how to, build rapport with folks, right? Those things are there. How to build on communication skills. So, it's not something that you got to go to and take a college class for, but it's something that you could watch a couple videos for and then begin to practice, right? And again, you are going to, this whole theme for the rest of this year is emergency management and emergency preparedness. This is part of it, right? This is the housing aspect of that. And so learning how to work together, building your circle of influence, building your circle of support, working on your communication skills are going to be paramount. And understand that the people that you're trying to communicate with may not have the greatest communication skills, right? So you're going to have to help them to not only listen, but also get across what their actual needs are, right? And so that's in your best interest. So while we can say, I shouldn't have to do that, this is ridiculous, right? We're in a time now where we are watching people struggle, right? How far-fetched would it be for us to be like, the folks in Haiti right now, right? I mean, God forbid our president is assassinated, but a 7 point something earthquake that, we're in a disaster zone. We had Hurricane Ida, we had the fires, we have tornadoes, we have the basements flooding in New York, right? So we have American citizens being displaced. We have a big homeless population here in this country, right? So all of these things already exist that we have to defend against. And there's only so much that we can do. And we're fighting, this pandemic that no one has control over. So we don't know what it's going to do. And there just isn't any housing. So while we can say we shouldn't have to do it, the bottom line is we do. We have to find a way to get along, and we have to find a way to communicate for the best interest of ourselves and our family. So yes, absolutely, kill them with kindness. Yes, give them gratitude. Yes, give them grace. But you know what? Extend that grace to yourself also, right? It's hard. It is hard. It's the reason why we do these podcasts. I'm so very thankful that Matt, Jill, and other folks that do come on are willing to give of their time, right? To share information, to share tips and ideas, right? To try to build relationship. This is relationship building here, right? And as you know, we have conflict, with KCR and BHA and different organizations based on trying to serve and help people. But at the same time, we've got to find a way to move forward so that we can continue to try to help people in the best manner. So we can't just say, you know what, these people are bad, this is bad, and I'm not going to work with you. That's not how it works. You can cut your nose to spite your face if you want to, right? There's 1,000 other people that need help, and they're ready to walk on in. So you have to be willing to do what you have to do, right? And that's that maturity, that's that emotional intelligence, right? And it's hard, but you will be better served if you work on your personal and your professional development. It will serve you in all aspects of your life. All right, that's my soapbox. I just, those things are really important, and I talk with so many different folks, and I hear their frustration, and I understand it, and I get that things aren't fair and things shouldn't be this way and that way, but unfortunately, that's the situation we find ourselves in now. So how are you going to be, successful in the scenario that you're in? And how can you try to prevent yourself from as much as possible from being in that scenario in the future, right? That's the best thing that I can tell you. I do want to give it to you two for the last word, just kind of any kind of recap or final words of wisdom, nuggets.
Well, I'll just say I totally agree with everything you just said, Marwan, and I think that it's really true. We are partnering agencies, and we are not always going to abide by the same rules or see things eye to eye or apply things in the same way. But if anything, during this COVID pandemic, you are absolutely right. We have to work together. It's not a choice anymore. So all of those differences, whatever, set aside. I think someone was saying, worried about people working from home. Are they going to be as effective as in the office? And I have just chosen as a leader of this agency to say, I'm not going to worry about that, because you know what? There may be one or two that aren't. I don't know, but there was probably one or two that weren't when they were coming into the office. And I'm going to concentrate on the ones that I know my energy is going to go to the ones that I know are working and doing their best. And the same really goes for this situation. My energy is not going to go to what we don't see the same. It's going to go to just resolving all of the things that we do see the same. And when Matt said, kill them with kindness, that has been my goal for my life forever. So it works way better than not. So I'll end there. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jill. Matt?
Oh my gosh! Wow, you two just summed it up so good. I don't think I could add anything more. I mean, that's fantastic. Yeah, Jill, I agree with that ethic so much. I think we spend so much time worrying about a small few things when there's so much more that we can do together and that unite us that need work on than worrying about, this detail there, that detail there. But I agree. And I'll just give a big shout out to all the KEPA outreach organizations, Surviving Change, Hope 360, Kayak, Foundation for Homeless Poverty Management, Mar1 with Gather Together, Grow Together. And I think that's it. But that has been I've been very humbled to work with so many amazing kind of grassroots organizations in the community. And I know I wish we would have started years earlier, but definitely very humbled by what we've accomplished so far. I mean, yeah, we're rapidly ticking for just this year, ticking closer and closer to the 1,000, person mark. We're just over 800 right now, in just this year, of unique households. And more have been helped, with energy too, and kind of multiple programs. So I think it's amazing, and I just appreciate both of you and working together. So thank you.
Well, a shout out to the Buy-in Force, to KCR, to Bremerton Housing Authority. Yes, it isn't always going to be easy, but what is important is that actually you're going to have conflict in life. It's going to happen. You're not going to be able to avoid it.
Yeah.
How you deal with that conflict is important. And wherever we started, you're absolutely right. It would be great if we started years ago, but we didn't, right? You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, but you can start from now. And you don't have to wait for a New Year's resolution, right? I tell folks all the time, it's like, I'll wait till January and then I'll start. Hey, you don't need to wait till January. Why are you putting it off? Let's start right now. And that's why we're starting right now. We're not going to repair the relationship after we get through the conflict. We can do both things at the same time. And while you're trying to repair the relationship, it should make the conflict that you're dealing with a lot easier to move through, right?
Yeah.
Because then you understand that people are coming from a different space, right? They're not coming from a space of, trying to get you or attack you or whatever the case may be, right? In most cases. I mean, sometimes it might be happening, but for the most part, people are good agents, right? And they're trying to do the best they can. But you're not going to know that if you actually don't get to know the people. Mm-hmm. And so this is a real opportunity for you to do that. So who in your life do you get to have an opportunity to get to know a little bit better? It's definitely your landlord for sure. What about some of the agencies? If you're working with KCR, if you're working with Bremerton Housing Authority, the better your relationship is with them, the more they know you and your situation, the better able they are to help you, right? You want to be remembered, but you want to be remembered positively. As I said before, I have students that contact me from years ago. Mr. Cameron, do you remember me? I need a letter of recommendation. And it's the ones that participated in class, that stayed in contact, those are the ones that I do remember. And so there are students that got 4.0s, did every assignment, turned it in, but never said a word to me. And I don't even remember they were in the class. So make sure that you leave your impression, communicate, get to know folks, because when you need them, it's going to be a lot easier for you. So I'm going to leave it there. Look forward to seeing you guys next week unless something happens. Thank you so much, Matt and Jill, for coming on. This is super informative. I love having Mondays with you. I love bringing this information to the people, and I know that you do too. It is 4 p.m., and I believe probably your day is over. So again, extenuating their day to help you in a way that wasn't happening 6 months ago, right? So that's what you can do. You are powerful. You can invoke change. So invoke that change. Doesn't take a lot. Just take some desire and a little bit of effort. All right. So for Matt, for Jill, I'm Marwan. This is the Conduit. Until next time.
Thank you. Bye.